Almost 7 million Americans 65 and older live with Alzheimer's, a brain disease that affects a person's memory, reasoning, and thinking skills. As the country's population ages, that number is expected to grow. And researchers are working to not only deepen their understanding of what causes the disease, but how to cure it. One decades-long study continues to discover vital information on Alzheimer's, thanks to its unique group of participants from the convent. The Nun Study began in 1991 by Dr. David Snowden, who asked members of the School Sisters of Notre Dame to participate. Almost 700 sisters 75 years or older initially agreed to take part in the study from across the country. The sisters underwent annual cognitive assessments for the rest of their lives, allowed researchers access to their convents and medical records, and donated their brains for research after death. A new study by the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio details the more than 30 years of Nun Study research and the key discoveries found from the sisters' data even after they passed away. Dr. Margaret Flanagan is an associate professor at the UT Health San Antonio and directs the Nun Study at the center's Glenn Biggs Institute for Alzheimer's and Neurodegenerative Diseases. She joins us now to discuss this insightful report. Welcome, Dr. Flanagan. These nuns became a very unique test group for researching cognitive decline. Tell us, how did this study begin and what made the sisters such a special group of participants?
Sure. Yeah. So, Dr. Snowden is the researcher who started the Nun study, as you mentioned, and he was an epidemiologist. So, in the field of epidemiology, researchers tend to focus on, different exposures, risk factors, um, and things like that to study disease and their design. And when Dr. Snowden connected with the School Sisters of Notre Dame, he found them to be an ideal study group because they shared so many things about their lifestyle. So, for example, they lived in, similar housing. They had similar access to health care and dental care. They had, about the same opportunities to pursue education, similar risk factors, and we're a very homogeneous group. So I believe he even had a quote saying that other than the Nun study, it would be pretty challenging to find such a perfect group to study outside of a laboratory setting. So, yeah.
Incredible to be able to eliminate all of these variables because of how providentially they came together. Well, what these nuns agreed to, Dr. Flanagan, was quite the commitment. They opened their lives to research for years. Why did they agree to participate? Do you have an insight into what motivated them?
Um, so I mean, from my own experience with the sisters, I would say they are a group of individuals who are very passionate about education in addition to helping others. So I think those two things really helped encourage and inspire and motivate them to continue such a high level of participation because they knew that they were giving back to, both students for the future who can use the materials to learn from, as well as contributing to finding cures for Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementias that impact so many people nowadays. So.
I'm sure their faith has a lot to do with it too, but tell us about your team's most recent study out of UT Health San Antonio. What has the Nun study showed you about aging and dementia?
Yeah, so I mean, it's 30 years, so I don't have time to go through everything. So maybe I can touch on just some of the key things. For example, in the Nun study, it was shown that the sisters who had a more optimistic or glass half full outlook on life were less likely to develop dementia versus those who were more pessimistic. Another key finding from the Nun study that we highlight in the paper is that you can actually things that you do when you're much younger and education or things like that may actually be very important in determining whether or not one develops Alzheimer's or dementia. So specifically, the sisters, when they became sisters between around 18 to 22 years old, wrote autobiography stories in the form of essays. And these essays were analyzed very carefully. And interestingly, in the essays that had more complex language and something that was referred to as higher idea density, those sisters were less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease or dementia later in life than those who had kind of more concise, basic writing. So I think that's fascinating, and
It's
really
incredible.
highlights how, early experiences or things can really impact uh, how things go further down the road.
The
So.
outcome at the end of your life, of course. Well, quickly, looking more broadly at the efforts to cure Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, what gives you hope? Can you say that we're making progress toward a world without these issues?
Yeah, I think we're making huge progress, actually. And I just want to kind of highlight that from my lab working with the Nun Study. We did a study where we looked at the Nun Study and two other additional longitudinal studies of aging. And it was over 1,000 individuals that we studied their brains. And what we found that really was surprising, but very important and gives us a lot of hope is that in individuals with the memory problems and Alzheimer's dementia, it was actually most common to have combinations of multiple brain problems at the same time. So, not just Alzheimer's disease amyloid beta, for example. It was, combinations of different proteins or vascular problems that were sort of all contributing to the memory problems. So I think this gives us a lot of hope now that we know that, combinations of multiple diseases going on in the brain are the most common in people, that we can really continue to move research forward to
Right.
develop different tests that we can, do blood tests, for example, during life
To
to
diagnose,
determine
no, for
which
sure.
unique combination that specific person has to have a more personalized medicine approach. So I think that gives us a lot of hope.
Definitely a lot to be hopeful for, and to remember to remain joyful in our dispositions as well, to ward all of these issues away. Thank you so much, Dr. Flanagan.
Thank you.